Okay, welcome to House Education, February 11. Before we head to the floor at 3:25, this is an opportunity for the committee to continue its conversation started yesterday. I'm not sure where we pick up and where we end, but as I was sort of thinking about everything that we're trying to accomplish here, it does occur to me that we all have something painful, or I don't know how to say it, in the proposals in front of us. For some, it is the potential impact on rural areas and small schools. For others, it's the potential impact on choice. For others, I'll say me, it is the impact on funding. There's, I would say that there's probably something in all of this for every one of us to look at as not just a political pothole, but a real political problem. And so we don't. I'm not asking this question to be answered, but just to keep in the back of your mind, can you overcome that? What would it take to overcome that? And what questions might you have to help lead in that direction? So yesterday, I don't even remember where we left off. I think people had some questions. I was asking everybody to try to take those questions or suggestions and make them more specific so they could be addressed or discussed or whatever. But I just sort of, does anybody want to pick up the conversation and figure out where we go from here, or talk about where we go from here? I'll go with Josh.
Actually, it's a question about what you asked us to do yesterday, which was come up with a proposal and run it by a legislative council. They're busy. What's our time frame to get something back to you? Because at that point, we're at their will.
Well, it was more, I was talking about getting questions answered.
Right.
And all that. And I think, do the best you can. We have time crunch.
Right.
We have, I would also say, a bit of an attendance problem in a couple of weeks. So we would like to, get as many questions answered as possible.
I'm saying, I'm trying for by the end of the week, but is that too?
That's fine. Yeah. We still have a pretty full agenda. Anybody? Well, I guess, there was some people were talking about a hybrid model. Can anybody explore that further or have any questions for legislative council with what that might mean? Leland?
Somebody explain it a little bit, hybrid model. Explain.
So I'll take it because I think I'm the one who said it. To me, a hybrid model is right. We have part of the state, part of us that wants just districts. And there are other parts of the state that want and need supervisory unions. So instead of having a map that just contemplates one or the other, it should contemplate both, right? We should be working with the communities that need supervisory unions and those who want and need supervisory districts, right? And then we can contemplate that on a map and then argue about who should be where, what town should be in here, what SU here. Well, I don't want to be in SU anymore, right? That is to me what the creation of a hybrid map would be, something that contemplates both wants, both needs for all of our communities, because that's what I keep getting as far as questions and concerns.
It may be worth investigating and talking about, but it also might keep us here all summer because that's not what has been asked of us.
Right. And for me, just that's the hybrid model that I was saying. Is there a way to look at both? Right. So I already explained that. I repeat myself, but I won't.
And then I took it a step further and talked about considering to have SUs, but within that SU, consolidating, kind of collapsing like operating districts together within that SU to have the bigger districts within the SU, so instead of like, SU that has 10 now, you could have that same district or supervisory union with 3 districts underneath it if you collapsed. It's kind of, so you still have that consolidation aspect of things, just on a different.
And so you're saying, just to, for me, for clarity, is if there's 3 K through 8 and 2 K through 12, the 2 K through 12s collapse to 3 K through 8. If there's a non-operating, well, then it just remains on its own. If there's 2 non-operating, then they combine together to create 1 larger non-operating. Is that right? Okay.
So certainly I've heard that floated before. Would I guess that the legislative council probably say, you can do whatever you want, or the legislature?
And city council. Yep.
I would be in favor of looking at that as well. Both in terms of keeping our eyes open and really thinking about the different regions, the different needs that these places have, whether it's geography or systems that are already in place. And I think that we should look down that road and not turn away from that. And I know what the superintendents have said, and I know we heard it again today, but I think maybe there's something out there that can make everybody better.
Well, and I've seemed to have trouble wrapping my head around this because, with the legislature doing want, but when I was on the task force as well, saying, I think is it different operating structures or in different school districts that can't be in the same school district, and that's why we have SUs. Is that because we wanted it to be that way and it's statutory, or are there actually some constitutional issues behind it too that we cannot change? And I don't know that I ever get a clear answer on that.
So that is a relic of Act 46, how we created districts.
Yeah.
The legal basis behind that, perhaps you could speak to.
Act 46 had specific language in it that, actually, let me just pull it up so I don't misconstrue, because it was before my time. The short answer is there may be constitutional concerns.
Okay.
I was going to follow up with just saying the legislature can do what it wants, and anybody can sue anybody about anything.
That was one of my concerns around having only SDs and not having SUs. I'm like, are there places in this state that we have to maintain SUs, not just because the community wants it, but because there may be some legal or constitutional issues that require them to operate that way? And just getting clarity around that.
I'm gonna actually assume it's the opposite.
I'm just,
That
continually.
the constitutional issue comes into we get to be an SU, but you don't.
Yes, about fairness and equal opportunities.
Go ahead, Leland.
I was just to follow up on this hybrid situation. I don't know if that's good or if it's bad, but our state of Vermont is small, but there are areas that are different than other areas, and something might fit better somewhere than it fits in another place.
I guess, for those of you who are advocating for this, what's the advantage?
I think we heard one of them today is, the kind of the more of a tie-in to the local control and the towns themselves. Get to the bigger district level, you lose an aspect of that. So that's obviously one of the arguments that's out there for.
I would say that'd be an argument for returning to SUs then,
Yes. Or
not just keeping the ones that exist, but really everybody returning to SUs.
Which, I mean,
if you want to throw that on the table.
Okay. Well, Rob, what do you see as the advantage?
Well, not just local control, but again, I think that for the places that now, are just surrounded by non-operating districts, also allows sort of that way of life to continue. And I'm here loud and clear, that's what people want. And I wanted to just piggyback with this. We haven't talked about the CTEs in a while. you guys came up with a map this summer, and I just, sorry not to like do an abrupt turn, but I want to make sure we get that out there. And talk about that a little bit too.
If that, so I would just say, you know, the CTE map, if that is something, Rob, that you want to study, learn, especially like why did they reject it?
Yep.
And, you know, bring it out, that's fine. Um,
I have just a question for the record, because I can't wrap my head around it either. I guess is the intention to have voluntary mergers where, or not, or forced mergers, and I think or somebody brought up, non-operating districts would be in their own district, somebody said that.
I was asking if
I
that's,
can't remember
it would be
So,
grouped.
my question around that is that, so then we would have school districts that were not contiguous necessarily to each other. It might be scattered around a district, an SU,
Oh.
but they're larger SUs.
That would be
So
true.
this is a question, not a comment.
I would say that could be the case. I mean, in the non-operating, I would think that they would have, you know, they still have their meetings, they still have to figure things out, but I think there's probably, I would assume, because I don't live in one, that there is probably less having to continue to do things versus district that operates K-12, right? Like, or any schools really, there'd be more communication on a regular basis. So I don't know if that, but I could also see where two fully operational districts that turn into one being separated by this stretch of land could be of concern. So I mean, and again, it's a thought and it's a conversation we had. And that's why, you know, with drawing these lines, I think that's where it would be important to design it.
Can I just answer the one aspect of that? In my thought process, it would be mandatory.
I have a question.
It's a clarifying question about the sort of SUSD hybrid. I mean, I think that's what we have now, obviously. So,
Definitely have that. Yeah.
you talked about like numbers and, you know, 2 to 4. So does that, how many total districts then are we gonna have? For those who are advocating for that, how many total districts then do you see in the state? If they were, future state was still a hybrid, we had SDs and SUs, how many in the end are there?
I wouldn't know till I looked at who ended up being within the map, within SU.
Because I also then start to wonder even more about the foundation part, like, I already have my, you know, concern, but that dramatically changes the foundation formula, so we are headed on a very different path.
Leah?
I mean, what about 15 SUs? What if we used the CTEs as sort of the centerpiece of SUs?
So you're saying that we just have SUs?
Well, you seem to be really finding it challenging to have a hybrid and think that that could be like a constitutional challenge or a lawsuit challenge. I hear you on that, and I don't want that either.
Yeah.
If we did move to just SUs, could we do it around the CTEs, which is something that people seem to be really valuing?
So I'm not quite sure I could possibly envision that. I guess I would say, what's the difference between 15 SUs and 15 SDs?
Well, within the SUs, have the district. I think it goes back to this.
A lot of school boards, I think, is the answer.
Which is what Chris, I think, is trying to get at.
Right, it's a lot of school boards, it's a lot of budgets, but. I mean, the thing that you said, like, what are the things that you can't get over? Or that you need to try and get over? I mean, one thing I can't get over is like. Our schools being shut down by people outside of those. And something I'm being told loud and clear not to let happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would find it very challenging to be able to say that we could have a state in which we have both SUs and SDs that is basically just keeping status quo. Because if you're going to make change, then make change. If we're not, then let's be very clear, we don't believe that we want to maintain the status quo. And collapsing a few likes within an SU, I don't think it moves the needle, but it also basically would prompt everybody who maybe was an SU to say, why do they get to be an SU and we don't during this whole revamp. So, you know, I think we need to move to a state where sort of one size fits all. You know, the issue, you're gonna hear me say the same thing over and over again that you've already heard me say, but when it comes to closing schools and all of that, and how we define community, but I think what you're talking about are towns that were line strong in the 1600s. Yes, it would be potentially a board that doesn't have the same level of representation of one town on it. That's the same thing we went through with Act 46. But these decisions, you know, the decisions are being made. They're being driven by factors other than the governmental structure. It has much more to do with declining enrollment, staffing, and construction needs. We probably should put back on the table the language from the Commission on the Future of Public Education that talked about a process for school closure in an era of larger districts. Sort of what has to go into it, and it's something we can put into language, which may or may not, it might make people feel more comfortable, perhaps not comfortable enough. But, you know, one thing I think about with this concern over, you know, the impact of schools closing, which is happening anyway, or that it's not because school boards are trying to make it happen for the good of students, for the good of taxpayers, and they're not, you know, being blocked by votes as we saw in Washington Central. You know, none of that solves the problem of declining enrollment. Buildings you know, having less and less, but needing more and more repairs and the inability to staff. So it's, I'm gonna stop talking. Thank you, Kate, for looking over.
Declining enrollment, you talk about that a lot. What I think about is opportunities for children, opportunities for our students. And I know what it's gonna mean in my district, because we're not gonna shut down those two schools. It's gonna mean we're gonna cut programming, we're gonna cut teachers, we're gonna have fewer opportunities for students, and none of that is fair. And it's based on the fact that people don't want to lose their small schools that are less than 5 miles from the next school over. I think we need to provide superintendents and larger school boards the opportunity to make sound decisions for all students within a district to improve education for all students.
That's right. Add to that. I mean, I think we heard that loud and clear from the superintendents who spoke today as well. The challenges of needing to make change and not being blocked from making change. That's going to be a major hurdle for us to either get over or not. So, you know, at a certain point in time, we're going to just have to sit here and raise our hands and say, can this committee get beyond that or not? And if, you know, or are there things that we can sort of do to help people? Because, you know, we're at a certain point, we're going to have to say, this committee can accept new larger maps, or this committee cannot. And, you know, that's where we're at. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that we're all in agreement that there has to be some consolidation. I don't think that's an argument in this room at all. So I think we can all get on board with larger.
Something.
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's true, but
Okay.
I don't know that that's true.
All right, sorry to speak for everybody. But you know, obviously, there's a lot to consider. And when you want to start getting, you know, the political side of things, we also have to figure out what we put out there, what's gonna actually move in the long run.
Beth?
I would say, I agree with Chris. I think, I'm gonna speak for myself, I'm on board with definitely having larger areas, fewer governing units. In fact, I'd go fewer than 27 even. It's what the something is that's a sticking point for me. You know, all SD model, no SU model. I'm still hesitant on. And of course, another issue, not a surprise to you, is the treatment of the independent schools within the system and the necessity that we have for independent schools in my region. And making sure that that is accounted for. I'm not sure the current language of designation is sufficient to handle that in my region. So is it something I can work with and continue? Yes. What's currently there does not work for me in my area.
Good, so I would say that language is up for discussion at any point in time. Yeah.
It's definitely a sticking point for me.
I actually want to continue on with Chris's thought process. Sorry, Chris. So when you brought that up, were you thinking of all SUs? So everything's an SU and then you do that like for like underneath all of them, or were you thinking of a hybrid or potentially not sure?
Which,
Like,
I mean, a good question.
so were you thinking under that structure of the consolidation of like for like underneath SUs? Right, were you thinking of it under a map of the state that was all SUs?
No.
You were thinking as a hybrid,
Yeah.
or you have something, okay, I just need
Not all
that clarification.
So in moving to the new districts or SUs, I mean, part of the idea is to have less government, governance, get rid of some administrators. And you ask the question, like, people are gonna say, why do we have to have an SD and they get an SU? Like, I think, one of the things in playing around on the map is it comes down to size and proximity. Like, it wasn't that hard to fill up 2,000 to 4,000 people over in Chittenden County, right? But it's like a lot harder to do it as you go across the state. And so I think that is one justification, is to say that, like, you guys can have a district here and then we need an SU here, because to create a district that big is just like completely unfeasible. But even within that, like, I think that there could be some compromise. Maybe if we did like SUs in our more rural parts, and we still could convince them to have bigger districts within those. So it's not 15 districts within those SUs. It's 3 or 4, dealing with 3 or 4 budgets, 3 or 4 principals. Like, it doesn't seem, and maybe I'm wrong about this, on the map, a way to make SDs within SUs, is there? And to like have 2.
Well, I mean, you basically, an SU is, we get caught up in a lot of things, but an SU is just a collection of SDs.
No, I mean on the map tool, there's not a way to do both, is there?
Yeah,
I think the
I
map.
guess I would need to do it on paper.
yeah.
But I think that we could have maybe some SUs in the corner of the state that had 2 or 3 districts in them, and still have like bigger districts other places. And the justification is it comes down to proximity, still within your community of 2,000 to 4,000 people, like how the district this big is for us.
So I'm not builder, you can create all the things,
Yeah.
you put them on, and then you would just name them, right? So in your region, it might be Leanne's SU, right? But you might want to see what does that comprise of, and that's where you can go over and check the existing SU. So you can do it, but it's very manual.
Yeah, I can try that. It doesn't make sense to me to say that we do need to just go with a one size fits all model. And you clearly play with the map and you can see that the way that we have set up our state population wise, it's not the same at all across the state.
It's more of for me, it's more of a question of, I think that there are lawsuit questions you know, one can, because people could say, they got to be an SU, we did not, we're gonna sue them so we can be an SU. So I think that I think that there are legal challenges of operating two different ways of delivering education. I'll say, you know, on a sort of greater scale, I think that we're gonna have a challenge, no matter what, in recruiting high quality people to SUs over SDs. Because I think fewer and fewer people want to be a superintendent in SU.
Yeah. If fewer and fewer teachers want to teach in an SU,
If
because if there's a rift, you can't move to the other school without losing your seniority. It's insane.
I'm getting all sorts of emails from teachers who want to teach in an SU, who are saying, please preserve our SU. So I mean, I think that right now this is really coming down to like what some seems like a good urban plan and what seems like a good rural plan, and we need to work together and not sue each other. There needs to be some compromise here. Like if you want us to move to district, you have to let rural Vermont also in some ways move. And I'm not saying anyone here at this table is or isn't rural, but like just in general. The only way it's gonna work is if we work together and allow this kind of flexibility and not sue each other.
Can't control who sues who, sadly.
Can we pass a be nice law?
If the concern of choosing SUs is losing local voice and local control, are there other mechanisms in structuring new SDs in those boards to work towards that in terms of the size of the new board or the sort of representational proportionality of that board to ensure there is voice from all towns, that there is certain, you know, I don't know if it's almost a first by necessity metric towards board membership, but I wonder if that, instead of a hybrid governance structure, which to me feels like, I will say, support you, I think, no change, and feels like we're pretty much stuck against a brick wall if that's where we are. I wonder if that's the place to try to address that concern, is in the way that the board is structured, if the concern is about local control of the voice.
All right, Jenna, you haven't said anything? Then yeah, you have to talk. Maybe we'll bring a sharing stick in.
That's sharing stick,
Relying on
okay,
you for
I've
the
got
voice
got the
story.
sharing stick. Oh man, that is, probably not today, sorry. No, I was thinking actually something sort of similar. You know, I think, you know, way back towards the start of this conversation, we had talked about, you know, school advisory councils or something like some kind of mechanism that would help folks be more comfortable with the fact that there would still be a great and impactful amount of local voice. And the other thought I had is I wonder, you know, short of redrawing, if we don't get to new maps, like, are there other tools that we can give superintendents to make the change that they want to make in their geographic areas? I mean, we had some discussion last year about, you know, dissolving articles of agreement. Like, is it worth revisiting that? Like, now that we're like really opening up the conversation, you know, it'd be great to maybe consider like what that full spectrum of options looks like.
I do want to pull us back to something that Aaron said earlier, and that is, you know, every decision we make affects the foundation formula.
Yeah.
And so the more districts we have, the less and less it works.
Can I ask, like Beth was working towards pulling up some language from Act 46. I didn't know if it would be okay to hear what would.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's helpful to remember that Act 46 was a snapshot in time. The majority of it that we all talk about and think about was all session law. And so there's very little in Act 46 that you all should think of as controlling in any way, shape, or form. You may think of it from a legal perspective. You may think of it as controlling from a policy perspective, and that is your prerogative. But from a legal perspective, it was a snapshot in time meant to achieve specific goals. It is 2026. We have moved on. From a legal perspective, not from a policy perspective. So Section 4 of this bill, so at the very beginning of the bill, there was language that required all governance transitions contemplated pursuant to the act to preserve the ability of a district that, as of the effective date of the act, provides for the education of all resident students in one or more grades by paying tuition, and to be able to continue to pay tuition. There's nothing in current law, nor did Act 46 amend what was current law then, to allow for a school district to both operate and tuition the same grade, right? You could, and you continue to be able to, under current law, operate for some grades and tuition for some grades, but not both.
Okay.
The same construct has carried through. Whether you keep that construct is a policy choice. And with all policy choices, there may be legal implications to those policy choices, which is why I said there may be constitutional implications to whatever policy choice you make. But Act 46 specifically right off the bat said, you can't, if someone currently tuitions, they can't be required to give that up in order to comply with Act 46.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Currently, we operate under SUs and SDs. And this isn't, I'm just curious, has there anyone ever tried to sue because of that?
Yes. More people have sued over the fact that some parts of the state have choice and others don't.
That's true, but I'm talking about the SU-SD conversation that we're in right now, specifically because you have an SU and I don't.
No, it has not come up because Act 46, for the most part, was voluntary.
And, and with the hybrid system, agree with it or not, like, I think it's still reducing what we currently have. Like, you go, even if we went to 27, it's still less the amount of SUs we have and SDs in general, by doing so.
So what's the purpose of this?
I'm just making a statement that it was that we're going to maintain status quo where we are, but when we really would be reducing is all I'm trying to say.
But why not go all the way?
All SUs?
No, all SDs.
Because I think go ahead.
I was just thinking, if maybe there's a way to reimagine an SD in terms of its governance, right? And I guess what I mean is, and I haven't thought about it, I haven't thought about it too much until right now, but what if we could recreate or redefine an SD so they could all be SDs, but then in your area, those kids would retain their choice. Like in my area, those kids would retain their choice. So I'm just saying, like, we have an idea of what an SD is right now. What if we just kind of blew that up and kind of redefined it? Said, let's reimagine what an SD is so that it works for Vermont, so that it works for every, right? Is that possible?
Well, I
don't
mean,
know. Emily's
we
laughing.
can do whatever we want, but I think what you have a problem with is why would we be operating them differently? And what are the legal implications of saying this one gets to operate that way, this one doesn't?
Beth, I know you have somewhere in all of your presentations, like the visual about different operating structures and all the arrows. Pull that up. And I'm trying to understand, so if you have new SUs, but you still have SUs, what exists within them for structures in terms of, like, does each one then have it still has a bunch of SDs in it? And so you have, because then, like, what assumptions go into the foundation formula? How do you make a foundation formula that's intended to be a sort of one size fits all? The weights are the way to address different types of students that are research based, that there are certain students with different needs. Empirically, again, research, not community feeling, of what is different.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I guess if you have the visual, I think it would be good for us to be looking at it when we talk about this.
The foundation formula is based on school districts. Our school financing system is based on school districts. Those are our governing structures. Supervisory unions are an administrative unit. They are not a governance unit in the same way that a school district is. it's easy for me to sit in this chair and say that because I am not in the field and I am not making the decisions. But when I read the law, there is a clear distinction between not only the duties and the responsibilities of those two structures, but what they are at their core. One is an administrative central office, essentially, with assigned responsibilities, and the other is the governing unit that is in charge for making all of the policy decisions for the school district. Your policy priorities individually may not align with that. And that's why I'm here to draft new language for you, right? But if you have me in the seat and you ask me what's the difference between an SU and an SD, and I pull up the statutes, at the core of it is one is a governance unit that governs, that runs, that makes the decisions and sets the policies.
Enters into contracts.
Enters into contracts.
Kennels.
Supervisory unions can also enter into contracts. Supervisory unions are also employers, right? It gets a little murky. But the statutory definition is that a supervisory union is an administrative unit.
And it's not elected, by the way, either.
There is no election. It does not have taxing capacity. It's not a municipality. It cannot explicitly own property. So much of what happens out there is not explicitly in the green books, but it happens. Let me find. I'm literally just on your website looking for this presentation. School governance, okay. And my internet connection is shaky, so bear with me. Well, my office used to be right there.
Before your chair is there.
Yep.
That's why you.
That's why you feel so comfortable here.
Oh, there's a magnet there. So it's hopefully loading.
Yeah.
Well, that's coming up, just so the committee knows, I will go downstairs at 3:30. If you all want to keep talking and not go to the floor, that is absolutely allowed.
Thanks. Okay, School Governance 101, January of last year. This was my awesome clip art with the box that shouldn't be there, but I don't know how to get rid of it. So supervisory unions surround school districts, which contain the schools. Supervisory unions, this is their definition from Title 16, administrative planning and educational service units created by the state board. Supervisory unions can be made up of multiple school districts or just one school district. If it's multiple, it's a supervisory union. If it's one school district, it's a supervisory district. I didn't write this law. I'm going to venture to say that the only reason we even have the term supervisory district is because we needed a way to distinguish between supervisory unions that were large enough to only have one school district and supervisory unions, in order to be functional or effective, needed to have multiple school districts. And so it was a way to distinguish between the two. Other than the number of school districts they provide administrative planning and educational services for, there's no difference. The boards are different. The school board is the supervisory district board.
Anybody in this room could probably answer this question, but I'm gonna ask you since you're sitting here. The supervisory district can contain more than one town.
Oh, yes, because the supervisory district,
I think,
Yep.
well, the reason I bring it up is because I think people often get confused about town versus school. And I think it's really important that we understand that there's another layer on all of this, and that is town, and
Yes.
that supervisory district could have multiple.
that's a great point.
One could have multiple schools as well.
Well, right,
Right.
but that's.
We're getting there. I have better visuals.
Better visual.
Don't you worry.
That's the dumbest question ever. Why would you have a supervisory district or supervisory union that has one school district in it? Like the one on the right, why? What is?
Mine is that.
So,
Or how does that,
It
work,
was
I
to-
guess?
It was to distinguish it from the supervisory union. It's not great terminology.
It would be if someone were to come to me and say, draft this situation now. One of the things I would be thinking of is, okay, well, we need to assign responsibilities to a supervisory union or assign powers to a supervisory union. So if we assign powers to a supervisory union, and then we say you're not a member of a supervisory union, who in that school district is responsible for those duties?
Mhm.
There's still supervisory unions are responsible for, you can see the statewide, the SU-wide curriculum, fund reimbursement, professional development, special education, which is a huge one, procurement, construction, teacher contracts, et cetera. If those were all in state law and you just said these are supervisory union duties, and a supervisory union is by definition made up of multiple school districts, and there is a decision made that this school district over here is so big that you only need one entity to do all that it's so big that if you were to add another one, it wouldn't be effective or I don't know the right word. What do we call this? The school district has not been assigned these duties.
Correct.
So then you're saying, but in these situations, then the school district shall take on these responsibilities. And instead, we just say everyone's a member of a supervisory union. If the supervisory union has multiple, I mean, I think you can just call a supervisory district a supervisory union. It's the same thing. The school board, and I think this could be, again, depending on your policy perspective, a meaningful distinction that the supervisory district board is the same as the school district board, and those are elected representatives. The supervisory union board are also made up of elected representatives, but they are appointed from their school district boards, right? So it's not the same. There's different levels of decision making on who is operating the supervisory union and who's operating at the supervisory district level.
Okay, you go first.
Are there extra superintendents then? Is there a superintendent who's taking care of the supervisory union?
There's one.
And then another superintendent who's overlooking that school district?
No. There's one superintendent for all 3 school districts here and one superintendent for this one school district. The superintendent's attached to the supervisory union.
It's why we have 119 districts, but we only have 53
Yeah.
superintendents. While we're on this topic, I will just put in another plug for one of the problems with supervisory unions. Voters don't vote on supervisory union budgets. They're hidden and buried within the allocated money that is voted on in the district budget. So in other words, the supervisory union, the unelected supervisory union board comes up with their budget, and then they allocate that cost out to the district budgets based on whatever formula they use. And then it's voted on
I would
as a line item.
back a little bit on the hidden and buried statement.
A little strong. It's just.
It is strong. And I say that because I think it's really important that people are aware in a supervisory union that when you vote on your budget, that you have a portion of the supervisory union budget in that. And so we do everything we can in our region to make sure that people know about the supervision. We don't bury it or hide it.
Well, it's less transparent just by function of its complexity.
I'm not arguing about the transparency, but this is actually really important because when people are upset about a budget in a supervisory union or in a school district that is part of a supervisory union, the natural reaction is to go back and look at, wait, we didn't get to vote on that supervisory union budget. Isn't that where we can get our savings when we don't want to cut our local school district budget? So I think it's really important because we hear that regularly. And I think most people don't understand how that works. It's not that it's a lack of transparency, but people feel very frustrated that they don't actually have a vote on that supervisory union budget. Your school board that is appointing people to the supervisory union recommends that and votes on it only, not the public.
You want to continue with this or move on?
I'll ask those who wanted the refresher.
You want to continue? Oh, okay.
Just the net, right? Like the,
Yeah, so,
the
You want the arrows.
I want, yes.
oh, you want,
Can I just say, because you said we could call them both supervisory unions?
Mhm.
I think it would be very confusing to do that, but I do think that you could call supervisory districts supervisory school districts. Because at least then they would understand there's a difference. They are really very similar, the supervisory district and the supervisory, the school district. They have very similar.
Mine's
Just the list.
I mean, you really
All I'm trying to say is, I don't think we should.
I just think of it as a-
Unions because it gets very confusing. People wouldn't understand. Especially if there's multiple.
okay, so this slide is just the different types of school districts. These are the powers of school districts. This is an example of union school districts, but here's some live examples. So this is one SU supervisory union that's made up of how many school districts? Great. How many schools is the superintendent in charge of?
Six.
Okay.
Just checking.
The whole building. You did great.
Do each of these school districts have the same operating structure? But they are part of the same supervisory union. They are two distinct districts. Same superintendent, same central office, different school boards. Echo Valley Community School District is made up of two towns. They operate two schools and they tuition. Payne Mountain is made up also of two towns, four schools. They operate all grades. This is a pretty easy example. Super easy example. Milton, the supervisory district, one school district that operates pre-K through 12.
I don't get it. Why not just be a school district then? I don't get
You
it.
are. You are.
You are a school.
But
There's others.
there are a whole host of responsibilities in state law that a supervisor union is responsible for and not a school district. And so this is a policy choice you could make. You could say, Beth, go and draft language that eliminates the distinction of supervisory districts and supervisory unions. And so my first attempt at doing that would be to go into Title 16 and say, if you are a supervisory union composed of two or more school districts, all of the duties that are currently there are assigned to you. If you are a school district that is currently a member as of a certain date and time of a supervisory district, then as of a certain date and time, all of the duties that are assigned under 261A to supervisory unions now become the responsibility of the school district.
Yeah.
I think there's other implications on where we have the LEA signification
How
for
many
special
school boards?
education. One
In Milton, there it is.
One school board?
One school board, one supervisory district board.
3 buildings.
One.
Three buildings.
One town.
One superintendent.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kate, I would say that the map that was put on the table envisions nothing but school districts, one word, one term.
And part of my job to operationalize that, should you go that way, would be to take all the supervisory union responsibilities and make them responsibilities of the school boards. This has major implications when it comes to special education.
I say special education.
This, I think, is my favorite example. This is one supervisory union. How many school boards are there here?
It's like, oh.
Yep. 5 school boards. Do they all have the same operating structure?
No.
How many towns? A lot, yep.
10?
So it is just
Some have
really,
more.
it's really varied. There's some of these school districts operate all grades, some of them tuition all grades, some of them do a little bit of both. Some of them are members of union school districts, some of them are members of elementary union school districts and then high school union school districts. Some of them are members of elementary school districts and then tuition their it's
One superintendent, one central office.
correct. All policy choices.
Right.
That's it. That's the last slide.
Full things and then go to North Country. It's even
Well,
more.
I had to be able to use the clip art.
Yeah.
No, I totally hear you. This is a good example.
If we moved to a school district model, seems like a lot of people are really fighting hard for, and I do understand all of the reasons that have been put forth about the efficiencies in that model. If we move to a school district model, I mean, could we include in that new rules that about like Representative Olson's bill to not close a school in another town? And yes, I know all of your questions and objections, but like we could do that, and like another bill that was like to let every town have at least one member on that school board. I mean.
So the answer to the question is yes and maybe. So yes, we could say if we're going to all school districts and if you wanted to advocate for towns get to have a vote on closing, that'd be fine. It may not win the day, but yes. The proportional representation on a school board is a little trickier. Because let's say the district, because of its sort of large geographic area, has 22 towns. A board of 22, it gets even more complicated. For those of us who are on a merged district, you have to have proportional representation.
Yeah.
And it has to be based on population. So like if you take Harwood, they have somebody from every town, but their vote is fractional. In other words, they might only get a quarter of a vote, or they might get a full vote. Or in my area, we have 7 people from Middlebury and 6 from the rest. We have 13. If you get into 22, and this is one of the challenges that we're going to have to face if we go down this path. You know, you don't want a board of 22 people. That's a lot of people, or more. So how do you create the representation on the new board? So under Act 46, we left it up to the newly merged districts to figure out how they wanted to do it. It was locally created. And we could do that here too. We could say there's going to be a transition board like we did with Act 46, and that transition board will come up with the representation with assistance.
Well, I feel like that is one of the big problems that is really stopping us up, is that, I don't know about other people, but I don't represent any towns that are okay with giving up the possibility that they'll ever be on their school board again. And that becomes really hard, especially when you're in a district where like much more urban and close knit or, more populous towns are going to be able to get those votes. Like it's possible that this tiny little town is never going to see someone on the school board again. And like that becomes a huge deal breaker. So
They're certainly not barred from being on the school
they're
board.
not barred.
You got to run and win.
They need it to.
Again, I think for me, it comes down to, I think that is, totally legit, absolutely something to think about. When you think about the 5 district model, or if we went to a 15 with the CTE centers,
Right.
figuring out that proportional representation is, when we talk about ward drawing and the ward drawing working group and all of that, that's what it's all about, is to make sure that every vote is represented. Going to, with the map I put down on the table, which goes to 27, there's a chance we could follow the Act 46 model and let the new districts figure out how they want to do that representation. So it's a little more of a homegrown method. But it gets a little tricky in areas where there's lots and lots of towns and you don't want to have boards that are more than 13.
And this is why I keep going back to, then that's why we need this hybrid model, is because we are not the same across the state in terms of these sizes. And
Or maybe we need to allow for districts that are fewer than 2,000 in some areas, so that you don't end up with a space this big that's got 27 towns in it. And you make sure you've only got maybe 13 towns in it. And then maybe you could create a board that has representation from all towns.
All worthy of discussion. Yeah, and I don't have an argument against.
yeah, I feel like there's gotta be some give here for the little towns. And it feels right now to me like they're standing to lose everything and that we're not really offering any give.
Yes, so I think that is worth discussing. And I think what we need are viable proposals to address that. So, I mean, mine doesn't have to be the only proposal on the table.
Yours.
What's that?
Is it yours that I fixed? or-
That's right, yeah, yes. Do an improved map on the table.
I go to the floor.
Uh,
Can I follow that?
yes,
I think it's one of my concerns of the foundation formula is that it is a mechanism to reduce spending and squeeze the system overall. And so I think that leads to pain everywhere. And there is pain everywhere already. People are not just in small towns, cutting. Losing programs, losing staff, that is that is happening.
No,
In schools, not just in rural Vermont, that is happening all over the state.
and I will, I'll echo the secretary and say that, larger districts have the ability to put the resources where they need to be. Part of the foundation formula is that, sort of the larger you are, the more money you get from the state, because it's a foundation formula. And a larger district with that not extra money, but they can direct it. And that may be the way you save small schools. It also allows them would allow a larger board to be more strategic in how you deploy the money, but also how you sort of have students around. It allows for maybe this is K to 3, maybe this is 4 to 6. Because the challenges small rural schools face, and I'm in a district where about to discuss closing our 3rd elementary school. They're not going away, and I think that districts need to have tools to address that. Anyway, if people are ready to break, we'll break. As the speaker kept encouraged me to say, you can always stay in committee, you can always stay in committee. And I have said, sometimes the floor is a nice break in the conversation, take a break. So we'll do that. We'll adjourn until tomorrow.